No pen.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay.
Ready for the question?
Oh, look, sorry. Don't ask me any theological questions.
You've got more stories to share.
More stories. Yeah, I'm sharing all the stories. What are the stories? Introverted and I need to put on my extroversion self this morning. Apologies if I'm a little bit low on energy. My body woke itself up around 5 a.m. I don't know why. It was hard to get back to sleep. So I will try my best to be as energetic as possible at 9:30. How is everyone else feeling? 1 to 5. What is your energy? 5 today? Some? I see some yawning. Still 4? Nathan? Okay. Let me open up in prayer and just acknowledge country together. Greater God, I just want to thank you that we gather here again this morning on the lands of the women and people. And I thank you that you have placed them here as custodians of these lands and we get to enjoy this place here today. Lord Jesus, we open our minds, our hearts, our bodies to receive your invitation to walk closer to you and with you. Help us be aware of your spirit with us today, whispering invitations to us. May we listen intently to what you have to say to us. I ask for your wisdom today as I share the ways in which you have been at work in my life, that it may help speak and encourage to my siblings here today. Amen. Okay, let me take this off. I'll warm up. Okay. So, yesterday, who remembers yesterday? So, there was a lot that happened yesterday. So we looked at discipleship, being a disciple of Jesus, and the purposes and tasks of discipleship. Yes? To be with Jesus, to become like Jesus, and to do what Jesus did. Yes? Those are the tasks of discipleship. And from this process, we too hope that we will disciple others then to be with Jesus, to become like Jesus, to do what Jesus did. Now, of course, this is easier said than done, isn't it? It's hard, actually, I reckon, to be a disciple of Jesus. So what we're going to do today is look at some of the challenges in our context here in Australia. We'll look at some census data for those who like data and like research as well. And then I'm going to also look at then opportunities for discipleship, because not everything is depressing. There's lots of good things as well. So let's paint a picture of some of the challenges and opportunities here in Australia. You ready for a quiz? Okay. So we'll look at the cultural diversity in Australia. What percentage of Australia's total population speak a language other than English at home? Okay. A, 16.6%, 22.8%, or 43.7%. I forgot to put percentage on B. Hands up if you're A. No? B. B over there. C. Ooh, the C's. The answer is... Oh, sorry, that's meant to be B. 22.8%. I think I was typing this really late at night. B. 22.8%. Okay? So in 2021, 5.8 million people reported using a language other than English at home. This was an increase from 4.9 million people. 21.6 was the previous one in 2016. So it's gone up slightly. The top 5 most common languages other than English, we got Mandarin, Arabic, Vietnamese, Cantonese, and Punjabi. Okay, next question. Hopefully I've typed this properly. What percentage of Australia's total population was born overseas? Okay, we've got A, 27.6%, B, 35.4%, C, 40.9%. A, who's putting their hand up for A? You got 27.6 for A, B, 35.4, or C, 40.9. Now everyone's like, oh, not 40%, because they knew the other one. A! Hey, sorry, I don't have the prizes. I should have brought prizes. 27.6% of Australia's population were born overseas. In 2021, just over 7 million people in Australia were born overseas, representing 27.6% of the population. This was an increase from 6.1 million, or 26.3% in 2016. So it's slowly going up, creeping up. Top countries of birth: England, India, China, New Zealand, and Philippines. Woo! Represent. Top 5 increases in country of birth: India, Nepal, Philippines, China, Vietnam. Top 5 increases. So this is just a graph to show that the proportion of the population born overseas is continuing to grow over since 1947. It's going up. And that dip is because of world wars and depression as well during that time. Why there's a dip, but it would have probably kept going up at that time. How about religious affiliation in Australia? Christianity has decreased by more than 1 million people since the previous census in 2016, but is still Australia's most common religion at 43.9%. Other religions continue to increase. Australia is becoming more religiously diverse, and almost 10 million Australians reported having no religion. So we've got 38.9% no religion, which is increased by 8%. So it was 30.1% in the previous census. So this graph is, so Christianity is the blue one. It's going down over time. And no religion is going up, that orange, slowly. And also other religions slowly going up. So over time, we have seen that Christianity is declining. whilst other religions and no religion is increasing. From 1970s was that graph. I want to share a little bit about the Baptist Union data, which is my context as well. Baptist Union of Victoria. We did some data crunching of our numbers last year. So we've got 257 churches, faith communities, missional communities and micro churches. And out of these, 106 are LOTE, languages other than English, or culturally and linguistically diverse churches, 41%, and 65% of them are members of the Baptist Union. 90 are LOTE, so they speak with their one language, their homeland language. And in total, there are 33 languages or dialects represented across our churches. So it's very diverse within the Baptist, this only Baptist Union as well. And we're seeing, in other denominations an increase in diversity as well. So that graph with the Christianity kind of going down, I think it's being propped up a little bit because of the migrant churches actually coming. We've got lots of Burmese churches, haven't we, Pastor Boy, in Baptist Union. I forgot how much the percent is, but it's certainly propped up the numbers of Baptist Union Victoria. So not necessarily new believers, God's sending people from overseas to Australia, really. This is the McCrindle research, so they're a research organisation. They did research into a snapshot of faith. So we currently have 6 generations. There's a lot of generations in Australian context. Builders, Boomers, Gen X, Gen Ys, Gen Zs, Gen Alphas. Can I actually just check? I don't know. I won't ask the ages actually. But I'm in the Gen Y, millennials. That's actually the millennials. But in this room, I reckon we might have everyone, maybe represented. I don't know how old everyone is, but we might have everyone represented when we're all in the auditorium. So this is really small, but just important global issues like younger generations are saying ending racism, Gen Z and Gen Ys. They found these really extremely or very important issues: ending racism, reducing climate change, social equality, alleviating poverty, and resource scarcity. So it kind of goes a bit less as they get older, but younger people are really more social justice oriented than the older generations. Sorry, the text is small. I can send these slides, by the way. Attractors and repellents to religion and spirituality. Okay, so from 66% of people would be attracted to exploring faith due to significant trauma, life change. 64% of people would be attracted to exploring faith due to seeing firsthand people who lived out a genuine faith. Philosophical discussions, stories, testimonies from people who have changed, coming close together, 58 and 57%. But the interesting thing in this data is 64% would be attracted to faith due to seeing someone else live out their faith, which speaks to us, doesn't it? Unfortunately, there is also a lot of negativity about Christianity, and the following are reasons that would negatively influence someone's perception. The first one, you can't see that, but 74% said church abuse would be a negative reason for them. And we've seen that the church has been involved in the Royal Commission into child abuse. 66% said hypocrisy. Christians are not practicing what they preach. 63% said their experience of Christians is that we're too judgmental. Christians acting self-righteously. Other reasons are around religious wars, issues on money, authoritarian styles, LGBTIQ, community, exclusivity, role of women, and also that the church is outdated and has no relevancy. There's a lot of reasons there to influence someone's negative perception of the church. Are you all sad? Not depressed. But there's a lot of reasons why people wouldn't want to be part of church or Christianity. Now, the Barna research, they interviewed, this is a global research project that they've done. So they've had organisations like Alpha and World Vision come together to do a global study to listen on perspectives of young people. So in 2018, they interviewed 15,000 young people, 18 to 35-year-olds, so millennials, and from 25 countries. It was a huge study, asking them about goals, fears, relationships, routines, beliefs. And in 2021, they interviewed, so this just recently, 25,000 teenagers, and it was more youth-focused, so 13 to 17 years old from 26 countries, and asking how they perceive the Bible, Jesus, and social action. And I can send you these documents too, if you want to read more in detail. I'm going to quickly run through it. Are you over the data yet? There's a lot of data. Others who love data, they give me all the data. But 3 in 10 Australian teens, 31% is Christian, identify as Christian. Over half of teens are atheist, agnostic, or have no faith. Most of the Christian teens in Australia are only culturally or nominally engaged in their faith. In Australia, 12% is a committed Christian. So out of that 31%, only actually 12% are committed in terms of personal commitment to follow Jesus. 1/5 is nominally Christian, 19%. So they self-identify as Christian, but not made a personal commitment. So maybe they grew up in church and identify as that. But majority of teens, 69%, does not identify as Christian or unsure about who Jesus is. I might skip that a little bit. The main thing is that they kind of have an indifference about Jesus, or haven't grown up in the church, or don't really care, actually, most of the teenagers, what they found. But Australian teens tend to place a significant amount of trust in their households or in themselves to find out about faith if they want to. Or they will go to clergy, other church leaders, or family members if they are curious about Jesus. So, challenges. Changes in our context. We saw that there is a growing cultural diversity. We are seeing a decline in people identifying as Christian. There's a growing distrust and a lack of relevancy of the church as an institution. Young people are growing up in post-Christendom, so no knowledge of Jesus whatsoever. Another challenge for us in our discipleship is that Jesus is not amongst us physically. That's a bit difficult to follow someone we can't see physically so much. So it's hard to capture some of those things. And hard when, we've got a text in the Bible that's over 2,000 years old. That's hard. Hard to interpret sometimes, yeah? And barriers to our own discipleship. So discipleship takes time. We are living in modern times where there's a lot of things to juggle. Work, study, responsibilities, making a living. We got a mortgage to pay. All those things. Netflix, we got to pay. Or you share your account. I don't know what about you, but other people sharing accounts. But that's what we share the love. But individualism in our culture, people becoming more individualistic and private about their lives rather than opening up their lives for others. Put materialism, money, capitalism as a system the narrative of more and more is better. We need to live a certain way to be comfortable. We these now. How about you? I'll ask the question now. What other things maybe are challenges in your discipleship or people coming to know about Jesus in your context? You want to just yell it out? Anything else come to mind that I might have missed?
I think what I see a lot is, I think about the comment about Christians, I guess, not being consistent or something like that. So, we're often tell new believers or something like that, we quote John 3:16, and we say by grace you can go to heaven, but then the moment someone becomes a believer, in a sense, we kind of pull the rug and say, well, but you really have to do all this other stuff. We go, well, so you told me 3:16, so did you tell me the truth or did you lie? Right? Because we can't say all there is 3:16 and by God's grace we go to heaven, but then the moment they believe, say, okay, there's really more rules, and that's not really the truth. Well, then you're a liar and you're a hypocrite. So our message has to be consistent. Right? You can't tell them one thing, then a moment later say, well, that's not exactly true.
So something with our messaging. Or the expectations maybe, or the burdens, the extra things we might place on people. Could be legalistic. Could look that way. Yep. Anything else?
There's a cliche when we say Jesus is the answer.
What's the question?
Yeah, so I think we're still not very good at listening to the issues around us. So we don't even know the question.
Yeah.
We just say Jesus. Jesus might as well be the answer, but we don't know the question.
Yep. Jesus, the broad answer to every problem. Could be. But yes, what it means to journey with people wrestling with questions, really wrestling with things, rather than just going, yeah, of course Jesus will be the answer to that. Yep. Or sitting with the uncomfortability, maybe. There's a lot of grey in life. I think as I got older, I turned 40 this year. It's a bit of grey. I feel like it becomes more and more grey. You know when you grow up and go, the more I know, the more less I know, or something like that. Like, I don't know, it just gets, the world keeps getting bigger and bigger. Yeah.
That's why it's 55.
55, you can tell me. But I think but your core is smaller sometimes, but stronger. Isn't that right? Sometimes, you're convinced of some things really, really well, but then there's other things that are more grey, and it's okay. Yeah. Yes.
As a Christian, I think the challenge is that we sometimes want to do too much too soon. So if we look at it, trying to get one person at a time, by individual testimony and so on, example, rather than trying to bring out our own people, because you feel the duty bound to attack everybody. But if you can reach out, maybe to many, just by being who you are and by saying who Jesus is, but always allowing Jesus to pick out that one for you to actually accommodate in the gospel. It's going to take away that vision that we have to be big. Because we can't offer them the gems of gospel and allow them to see Jesus and allow Jesus to introduce at least one to us if we can help.
For sure. So it can be very overwhelming at times. So who is it that Jesus might be placing right in front of you that you don't see? Yeah? Okay, I'll keep going. So opportunities. 3 things I just want to explore today. So narrative. So what's the story? What's the invitation for us to be part of a larger picture of what God's doing? And I think, and Pastor Benny's going to speak more around cultural narratives as well in his session. What does it mean to be a witness? Pretty much what you were saying, Martin. Individually, but also collectively as a church. To be a witness to what God's been doing in our lives, in word and deed. And the role of mentoring, which everyone can be doing in discipleship. So, let's look at narrative, the bigger picture. Jesus is part of a larger story. The church is part of a larger story. But what is this story that we're inviting people into? Dr. George Miller, who is the Australian filmmaker and producer of Babe, Mad Max and Happy Feet, says this: all of us carry highly personalised narratives. They make up the mosaic of who we are and what we believe. Most of the time they're implicit or subliminal because we don't apprehend life by the intellect alone. When there is an interconnected set of stories, we call it a mythology. When it's shared by a group of people, it becomes culture. We're a group of people that share a big picture story, and stories are powerful because it gives people meaning of our world and gives a sense of purpose and connection. So we're just going to quickly run through this because I'll run out of time maybe. So we're part of a meta-narrative, an overarching story that is continuing to unfold. So let's look at this. And I know lots of you probably already know this, but let's look anyway to remind ourselves of the story we're part of. If you think of the story, the Bible, as a 6-act play, okay? So in Act 1, creation is introduced. Here the author's plot intentions are revealed. The actors are introduced. The scene for the story is set. We read in Genesis, in the beginning, God created the heavens and earth. Light and day, sky, land, seas, plants, trees, vegetation, sun, moon, stars, living creatures, birds, wild animals, and humans in the Trinitarian image of God. And all of it was good. Very good. Humans were very good. But it was all very good. Who wants to take a guess what the next one is? Chapter 2. Goes to chapter 3. It actually doesn't stay good very long, unfortunately. So in the second act, we see a dramatic plot tension enter the story. A serpent is introduced into the story who seduces Adam and Eve to go against God's instruction in how to live in the Garden of Eden. From here, we see brokenness from what God had originally intended. Brokenness in all dimensions. God and humans, humans and nature, humans and humans, humans and self. It's all broken. We see a mess of brokenness. Who wants to guess what Act 3 is? The story of start of Abraham and Israel. Promises a people. God chooses a people where God intended to be their king, to be a model kingdom, an exemplary community. This just says the master's voice, that God speaks through the voices of the prophets to speak to the rest of the community. But we know that story, don't we? It's a cycle of faithfulness and failure, and a people continually compromised by human sin. That's a mess too. But there's lots of good things as well. But it's just this cycle, ongoing cycle. Act 4. Jesus. This is a photo of what they think maybe Jesus looked like as in his ethnic sort of day. So Act 4 is like climactic and pivotal phase, the story of Jesus. Here is the decisive act which begins to unravel the plot conflict at its deepest roots. Here are the foundations of an ultimate resolution. God moves into the neighborhood, embodying human form, showing and embodying what life was meant to look like, challenging the root of the problem and overcoming death. Act 5 is the story of the church. We see winds of change. Scene 1 of Act 5 is enacted, taking us to about 100 AD. Then nothing. No script. That's all we have, the early church. No script. I'll come back to this in a second. Act 6 concludes with the narrative of the eschaton, the consummation, sketched briefly in Revelation 21, echoes back to Genesis 1. Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth. We hope to see new creation as the ending, which kind of isn't the ending in a way. Start of the new beginning of the end. But we get a hint of how the story is meant to end, yeah? So I'm going back to Act 5, the church. Put yourself in the picture. This is currently where we actually are presently. There is no clear line from Act 5 to the conclusion of the drama, is there? Not exactly. I'm kind of doing this. 2 steps forward, 2 steps back, maybe. A few revivals, a few things going back again. Maybe another generation, another revival. Kind of up and down. How then, as a people of this story, do we contribute to the resolution of the plot, conflict, and tension, acting faithfully to the story's intentions? So, if someone was to find an unfinished script of a play by Shakespeare, you open something up, there is a missing act. How would we go about producing and performing it? Being faithful to the author's plot intentions and consistent with the rest of the script. What would you do if you found something? Any thoughts? If you saw an act, if you saw a play by Shakespeare and there was a missing act. Sorry? Romeo and Juliet would die. You might change it. Opportunity to experiment a little bit, potentially. Anyone else? What would you do? Any ideas? I'll just give you some ideas. So maybe we would find the most highly trained and sensitive and experienced Shakespearean actors who might immerse themselves in the first 4 acts of the play. People who might know the language, the culture, to improvise the completion of the drama. And of course, there'd be disagreement and various interpretations. Does this sound familiar? Various interpretations, but also a tremendous openness to how Act 5 was to proceed. So a challenge for us as disciples is for us to be immersed in this script, this story, this overarching story. And the Bible is a large library of various genres, written in a different time and context from ours. It's difficult to comprehend, yeah? I really struggle with the Bible. Just so you know. Just because I gone Bible college does not mean that was easy. And I naturally actually hate geography and history. Like to read some of this stuff, I actually did not like humanities in high school or anything. So I'd zone out. So it's actually really difficult. I know for those, you might start from Genesis and then you stop at Leviticus probably. or something once you get there. Sometimes that's happened. Anyone else done that? Because I've done that. It takes a while, yeah? It takes practice to read a text from your own, from another context. And even though Jesus is not with us physically, Jesus has left us with the Holy Spirit to help us discern, and left us each other to help discern together. So God invites us to live into this story, and we get to join with God as God restores and redeems all of creation, where the world is made right, where people are dignified, where there is no longer any enslavement but liberation, where humans know how to be custodians and stewards of creation and to see the world made whole again. This is the story that fuels and sparks my imagination, encourages me to take action in our time and context. God's doing amazing stuff, and you're invited. Woo! It's exciting to be part of this story. I think deep down we want to see people come to know this God who knows us, this God who loves this world, and we want to see people restored to God, to each other, to this world, to this creation. And I think that's what I yearn for. I don't know what you yearn for, but that's certainly what I yearn for. So being part of the bigger picture, big story narrative of Jesus. Being a witness, communally and individually. In the research into young people with their engagement with the Bible, we know that their engagement is very, very low. So young people are not growing up knowing about Jesus, about the Bible. But guess what? You are the Bible to them. We mentioned that before, didn't we? You are their first introduction to the big story. In 1 Peter chapter 3:15, always be prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks you to give the reason for the hope that you have, but do this with gentleness and respect. This presupposes that people in your community can see something in you in the first place that they're drawn to before they even ask. They need to see something in your life that looks like something maybe they yearn for as well. In the New Testament, followers of Jesus were not called Christians. They were called people of the way. People of the way. There's a whole bunch of other names. People of the way, and we read in the scriptures. There was something different we're drawn to. We read in Acts chapter 2, that the early church devoted themselves to the apostles' teachings, to eating together, hospitality. They generously gave, sold property and possessions to give to anyone who had need. They were sincere, opened up their homes, filled with gladness, praising God and enjoying the favor of all people. People saw something in that community of believers and wanted to be part of it. I think a strength in Vietnamese, Asian communities is our collectiveness, isn't it? That's actually a really amazing strength. And lastly, a new command I give you, love one another. So from John 13, love one another. As I have loved you, you must love one another. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples if you love one another. The way of Jesus is marked by love. So within your local church community, hard question is, do you really love one another? How am I to love a stranger when I struggle to love the people in my midst? In your local neighborhood, do you love your community? If your church were to disappear from that community, that neighborhood, would your neighborhood even notice that you're gone? And if people can see the love of God permeate your life and community, are you prepared to share what you have experienced about Jesus in your life? We're going to do some of that preparation after lunch as well. Being prepared to give a reason for the hope that you have. Okay, the third point, an opportunity in discipleship, is the role of mentoring. One thing I do think that our various migrant and local communities and churches need to get better at is the role of mentoring. John Mallison mentions that particularly Christian mentoring is the dynamic, intentional relationship of trust in which one person enables another to maximize the grace of God in their life and service. Mentoring is an opportunity for maybe an older person to journey with a younger person, or maybe someone just a little bit more along the journey of following Jesus, to someone maybe just new to following Jesus and being a disciple. I'm going to play a short clip. It's a few different clips come together from the movie Karate Kid. Has everyone seen the original one? Not the younger ones who don't know, maybe the older ones. But sorry? Multiple times. Karate Kid. Let's watch together.
Now ready? You're ready. First wash all the car, then wax. Wax on right hand, wax off left hand. Wax on like that, and circle. Wax off and circle. Accomplish benefits. Hold in the wrist.